The Nintendo Entertainment System definitely goes down as one of the most important systems that was ever released, as pretty much revitalized video games here, at least in the United States. And it introduced a lot of classics like Mario, Zelda, Metroid, and also while they would go on to the systems later on, but games like Contra, Mega Man, Castlevania, they all became found a home here on the Nintendo, and all those games, along with a lot of third-party support, really elevated the Nintendo to be just the juggernaut that it was during the third generation. I didn't grow up with the Nintendo. I was more of a Sega kid, but I did have a lot of friends that had the Nintendo. So in a lot of ways, I felt like I experienced quite a bit of it, where I have a lot of nostalgia for the system. So I'm going to highlight here 10 of my favorite games that I personally feel are the best on the system. But definitely let me know what you feel are the best games on this system here, and we can reminisce on this amazing system that helped pave the way for really a lot of the successes that the video game industry has had since then. At my number 10, I have Ninja Gaiden. So this game here, I used to play a lot when I was a kid, but never did beat it back then. I just remember I think I would get to like about the fourth stage or so, and ultimately just, I mean, the game is very difficult and just kept dying and dying, but it was just so much fun though playing this game, and it takes some certain, I guess almost like certain structures that like Castlevania did, which I was already a big fan of. And by that I mean is that, well, outside of it being just like a side-scrolling action game, but you get a life bar, very similar to the one you get in Castlevania. You can also see the enemy's life bar there, and which it will eventually be for the boss at the end of the stage. And then you get like your sub weapons, and then the either the lanterns or different things that you destroy in each level to get like new power-ups. And so all of that is very similar to Castlevania, and kind of like Castlevania, but probably even more so. Again, the game it is pretty challenging, but it can be still that somewhat fair challenging though. And so that's what helps this game, where you kind of want to keep coming back to it more and more, as it can be a bit addicting, right, as you're trying to solve the obstacles in each stage there. But one thing that really made this game pretty cool though back then was the cutscenes that in this game, as it tells its story, which the story is not much anything to brag home about. It's, just kind of cheesy. It reminds me a lot of like those ninja action movies from the 80s and all, but it's still pretty entertaining for what it is at the time. And yeah, definitely, I mean, like I said, if you were into like a difficult but cool action game, this is definitely one of the best on the Nintendo. And it was developed by Tecmo. And so they were just one of the developers, a third-party developer for the Nintendo, that really made that system shine. As, I mean, Nintendo pretty much had all of them, right? Tecmo, Capcom, Konami, and several others. And so this is one of their best games that they put out here on the Nintendo Entertainment System. So a lot of fun, cool bosses, cool enemies, and even pretty decent music too for the time as well too. But next up is Mega Man 2. And so I've recently been getting into the Mega Man games. I've only actually beaten parts 1 and 2. And I really had a blast with this one, part 2. So I can see why this one tends to be considered for many, from what it looks like, the more favorite Mega Man game out there. At least within the mainline series. And yeah, I really had a fun with this one. And so what I enjoy about Mega Man games in general is I just like the concept of, you're going into a different world, and, each world has a theme to it. And then also, too, as I started playing the first one, and then this one also, is I really enjoyed the almost puzzle solving of it, where you have to try to figure out which enemy's weapon will work against another one to make it really easy. And then once you can find that combination, it makes for kind of an addicting gameplay, where you want to keep coming back to it and all too, so you can solve that puzzle, so to speak, right? Because once you can just eliminate a boss within like 1 or 2 hits, right, or just because you got the right weapon, it's one of the more satisfying things in video games, because otherwise the game can be quite challenging. But what I liked about this one though is that it's difficult. It was challenging. It's not quite as much as like the first one, and I'm gonna assume maybe not the other ones. I'm not sure, but meaning that it's a challenge, but it still feels a lot more doable than say some of the other Mega Man's out there for the Nintendo. But yeah, and the crazy thing is that I think I saw somewhere or read somewhere that Mega Man 1 did okay financially, but they wanted to do another one, but Capcom had the developers, I guess, working on something else. So they said you can work on it as long as you do it in your spare time. And so they were able to crank it out like in about a year's time or so still. So that's pretty impressive. But yeah, Mega Man 2, it's definitely a classic for a reason, and has one of my favorite, most satisfying weapons to use in a game, and that's the metal blades. They're just a lot of fun to use in this game. But yeah, great game though, and yeah, I mean, if again, a lot of the games that you're going to see on this list here definitely fall under the category that were categorized as Nintendo hard, meaning that they're just really challenging games. But we cut our teeth on a lot of these games here, so it's nowadays I do have a hard time going through these games, but back then, I mean, it's what we had, right? And luckily with these games here, the stages aren't as long and all, and so if you die, even if you have to go back to the beginning, because usually it was like 3 lives, 3 continues or so, it's they're not terribly long games and all that, so it's not as punishing as it seems. But just getting the timing down a lot of these platforming and action challenges was definitely tough. But yeah, great game though. But speaking of Nintendo hard, so for my number 8, I have Contra. Now, a lot of the games that came from the arcade to the Nintendo, what was cool about it was that, sure, maybe they didn't look and sound as good, but a lot of them actually ended up being a bit better just because they were made specifically for the system. And that's what I thought about Contra. It's a run and gun shooter. It more or less, covers some of the same stages, but something about the Nintendo one, it just feels better for me, and just overall controls better, and I just feel it's just a better overall playing game. And yeah, I mean, this game again just sort of set itself as the standard for run and gun shooters of its time, and just a great port on the Nintendo, which again it's not going for arcade perfect, but just for its own thing, it's definitely unique in that. And yeah, I mean, just if you were around the 80s and could appreciate like a lot of those action 80s movies, like, because it's kind of a combination of like Rambo meets Aliens and Predator in a way, which is great because I love those movies as a kid. And even like the main characters, what are the names? Bill Ritzer and Lance Bean, I believe. You can, I mean, I don't know if this is for sure, but for me, it kind of seems like they took inspirations from like Arnold Schwarzenegger from Predator, and then Rambo from Rambo 2, which is pretty cool. But yeah, great game, great 2-player action also, and it popularized also the, because it sort of became like a pop culture reference where, the up down, left, up down, left right, B A start code. Which didn't originate in this game. That originated in Gradius, which I believe came out the year before, because this game would have been in 87, and I think Gradius 86, something like that. But Contra seemed to be the one that really popularized that code now, though. But yeah, great run and gun shooter, and spawned several cool sequels afterwards. And that's the thing about a lot of these games on my list here, is that if it's not the first one or the second, if it's usually they're early entries in a series, but they spawned a lot of sequels that would continue on for generations later on. And so the fact that they got it so right in one of their earlier versions is, it's truly a testament to the quality of this library on the Nintendo. But coming in at number 7, I have Metroid. And so Metroid, this game here, it definitely improved, right? I mean, I'm sorry, the later entries improved on this formula, because this one is a bit rough. It can be a bit rough to get into because it's very archaic and vague as far as what you need to do in the game. The probably one of the more frustrating things about the game though is just trying to grind to get your level or your health back up, and that can take a while, as it seems like sometimes enemies don't always drop health drop ups or drop off, or God, what am I saying, health power ups, and so that can be a bit of a pain. Again, no map and all can be a bit frustrating, but that's what we had to work with also at the time. And so because of that, I feel that this one, because there's a Metroid Zero Mission that's out, which really improves on this game in a lot of ways, and that's definitely my more preferred way to play this game. But this game still has a certain feel to it that I wouldn't completely overlook it if you're willing to give like an old school Metroidvania kind of game a shot. as I think that you'll find the sort of the difficulty and the black backdrops and all, even though they look basic nowadays and probably they were done that way due to limitation of the hardware, it still gives the game a certain very like isolated feel, and that's what made Metroid games really popular going forward, right? So in that sense, it kind of exceeds its or it excels in its goal. So I would, like I said, if it can be difficult and challenging, but I would still give it a shot, and just if anything, just to see where the series started from. Let's see. But then for my next one here, so let's see, this would be number 6. So I got Bionic Commando. And so Bionic Commando, so this one was developed by Capcom, and it's kind of the same thing with some of the games here, is that it was an arcade game, but the port to the Nintendo was done different. And actually, and I think the popular opinion was that the Nintendo version of Bionic Commando is much better. The arcade one, I've never really played it. I've seen it, but more or less, I mean, you're doing the same thing. It's a running, kind of like a running gun shooter, but you have a bionic arm that you use instead of jumping, which makes for an interesting mechanic. And this one though is pretty cool, as each stage you know, it's not just simply as going from right to left. You have to go into these bases sometimes and find some hidden rooms and eventually get different weapons and all, which could be kind of fun to experiment with on, you know, on how you're using them throughout the levels. And yeah, I mean, it's this game, it feels very original, and I never beat this game back then, but I remember my brother used to play this game quite a bit, and so I enjoyed watching him play it. And it was just a lot of fun to watch on that. As I remember, I think the last boss, I think it was like Hitler, and getting to see his face blow up and all was kind of funny. But I remember it had a lot of cool weapons in it though, and I thought that was always like a fun reason to keep coming back to the game. So you know, you can try to unlock all the weapons in it, because it has everything from like the gun you start off with, which just kind of seems like just a regular, you know, just a regular shot. But then if I remember right, you get like a rocket launcher of some sort, and then like I want to say like a three-way gun. It's been a while since I've seen this game all the way through, but just some memories that are coming back from this game. But yeah, but I thought it was pretty cool though, as it has its little story, right? As you go into some of these rooms, you'll communicate on a computer with your commanding officer, you know, back at base, and he'll give you some information. Pretty basic by today's standards, but at the time it was pretty revolutionary, right? Any game that would try to introduce, I'm sorry, a bit of story to it was always pretty cool. But yeah, Bionic Commando, a lot of fun, and definitely one of the better games that Capcom put out here on the Nintendo. And wish this game would get re-released, because I haven't really seen it anywhere. Like, it's not on, I'm pretty sure it's not on the Nintendo Switch Online service. And I mean, there was some years ago they did do like a remake of it that was more like a 2.5D game, but ever since then though, we haven't really had anything other than that on it. Well, I mean, you know, excluding the 3D one also that came out too. But yeah, I wish it would just re-release just this Nintendo game as is, because it's a great game. But coming in at number 5 though, I have Punch Out. And so if I'm thinking about just like the funnest games on the Nintendo Entertainment System, Punch Out definitely is up there. It's just such a fun game to play. I remember this game was definitely a game that I was where you can earn some bragging rights and on the playground, right? Because I remember it was always like, hey, did you beat Mike Tyson yet? And I never got to back in the day. I think I knew a friend that claimed that he did at least at one point. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of fun. It's definitely more like a action puzzle game in a sense, where a lot of the game is just you know, memorizing the boxers' patterns. But it's a lot of fun though to try to learn their patterns, and you know, that with the cool, you know, character designs, and the, you know, for the Nintendo, some pretty big sprites and all, and just made for a lot of fun. Kind of the same too, where the arcade was a bit, I mean, it was different than this one, but I mean, I feel like the popular opinion again on this is that this one was just funner than the arcade version, where in the arcade the characters were bigger obviously, and on the camera was sort of pulled down a bit, but your character was like a wireframe, so you can see through, so you can see your opponent. Where this one, the camera's a bit pulled up, where you can see your fighter all the way, and then also your enemy in front of you also. And or not enemy, I guess your opponent. It's a sports game, I guess. But Yeah, just it was just a lot of fun to play through again. The colorful cast of characters definitely made it fun to try to get to the next boss, and then also trying to figure out their patterns and all. It just gave the game a lot of character. But Punch Out, yeah, definitely one of the funnest games on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and one that I can still come back to and just have a lot of fun. While going back to this game. But at my number 4, I have one that's a bit of a black sheep game, but it's Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. And this is my favorite one out of the Nintendo trilogy. I like part 1 and I like part 3, but I got really intrigued by the whole Metroidvania aspect of this game. They weren't really known at the time. So, I have Metroid and Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest on this, and they were kind of the early pioneers of what would eventually become Metroidvania. But it took Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night to really kind of perfect that more, what ended up getting the name Metroidvania. But these were like the early blueprints of what that genre was going to be like. And the game is vague as far as what to do next. The map is really confusing. But something about it though, and again, a lot of this might be with nostalgia, because we rented this game quite a bit at a friend's house. So actually 2 friends that I had that we rented this game quite a bit because we really enjoyed it. And granted, we ended up using a walkthrough to finally beat the game. Excuse me. But it's still so much fun, and for what it is, even though the map is really confusing, I just thought that it was pretty ambitious that they would do something like this, where again, it wasn't just going from a simple left to right with an end goal, that there's a whole world to explore, and the whole gothic Transylvania Dracula theme and all just made it really fun for me, as I was always, I've always been a fan of like Halloween stuff and things like that. So this game was just right up my alley on that. And I mean, the controls are spot on. The Simon feels really tight and precise to control, and just again, the level layouts can be a bit confusing, but they're still pretty well done. And as far as like the how you're traversing through the levels and the platforming on it, I thought the concept was cool of locating Dracula's body parts to put them together, only to kill him afterwards. I thought, I don't know, something about that I thought was cool. And again, very difficult game. It's as far as like it doesn't really point you in the right direction. And that's one theme about this generation here, in this console, that there was just a lot of great games. It's just that they were really vague though. But that got perfected on in later entries, but it was still fun to explore and get lost back in those days. And this is a game that I remember we put a lot of hours into and all, and the music is so burned in my head now, just because we used to listen to it over and over, and because it's so good too. Probably my favorite soundtrack on the Nintendo Entertainment System. I mean, all the like the Bloody Tears and the I forgot the other song names on this game, but they're done so well for being on an 8-bit system. They sound really good. But yeah, I know more people would probably choose part 1 or 2. I just really enjoyed this game, but I'm curious though, which how many Simon's Quest fans are out there? Because I kind of feel like this game doesn't get a whole lot of love, but it for me it is so good though. But coming in at number 3 though is a game that's kind of similar in a way, and that's Foxanadu. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. But it's another action adventure game, sort of like a Metroidvania. And so you play this, I guess, like a warrior, and you're climbing up this tree to try to solve this mystery as to why, what is it, like the water's drying up or something like that? I kind of forgot. But great thing about this one is, again, it was another adventure game where you're exploring towns, buying items, and trying to unlock certain parts of the overall map, right? Where again, it's not just a simple going from left to right to an end goal. And I just really enjoyed that. I mean, this is where my love for the Metroidvania series really started, and a lot of it was because of Nintendo games. So with Metroid, Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, Foxanadu, to an extent, Bionic Commando, and there was some other ones too, also like Iron Sword, which I almost put in this list here, but didn't quite make it. But I just really enjoyed that, right? Where you're just exploring the world and all. And that's why when I played Hollow Knight last year, I really got into it just because it reminded me of those days of playing these difficult Nintendo games that you would just get so absorbed in the world as, yeah, you're doing a lot of backtracking and all of which can be tedious for some, but I just enjoy it. I feel like you really get to know the game environment that you're exploring and just makes it for just a really fun time. But yeah, Faxanadu, for what it is, pretty decent graphics, cool selection of weapons that you can get on it, and magic spells as well too, and items that help you explore the overall level, and cool music too. This is another game that I really praise the music a lot too, also on it for being on a Nintendo system, and a game that I don't hear too much about anymore now, but definitely worth playing, worth your time if you're any bit into like action adventure games with a retro style and with a bit of a Metroidvania to it. Yeah, great game, Faxanadu. And at number 2, I have The Legend of Zelda. And this game too, just like a lot of the other ones I've already listed on here, can be pretty vague as far as knowing what to do nowadays. Honestly, nowadays I can't really play the game without a walkthrough, but it's still a lot of fun for me though. And I mean, I can see how back in the day this game was really awe-inspiring for just letting players just do pretty much whatever they wanted. I mean, nowadays, that's kind of why I think Breath of the Wild was so popular, because it kind of took inspiration from this game where, you get a starting point and then it's like, okay, wherever you want to go. I mean, ultimately you're going to find out that certain areas are much more beatable than other areas, right? Early on in the game. But technically, if you're really good, you can beat higher levels areas than what's intended to be the first level, where as far as like dungeons goes, if you're really good and you want to explore and all. But definitely was just really powerful in the medium of video games, that when games let you explore this way, because it gave you like the sense of freedom and almost like being in a virtual reality, right? Where even with its simplistic graphics and all, but you were just so immersed in these worlds and would just get lost in them. And couple that with just like the really catchy overworld music and simple but effective gameplay, and just so many secrets to unlock. And I mean, it just made for a really fun time. And between this and Mario, and Nintendo really had 2 back-to-back hits that to this day are still sort of like their main 2 staples as far as in their gaming library, right? That fans always look forward to their next installment, because they hit it out of the park with these games right from the start, right? And yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a testament to Shigeru Miyamoto. The guy's he's quite the genius. But yeah, Legend of Zelda, such a great game for what it is. Again, it can be a bit archaic nowadays, but still fun though, and definitely worth playing. Just maybe bring a guide along though. But at the game I have at my number 1, and speaking of Mario, is Super Mario Bros. 3. And so I picked this one here out of the other Mario games, as I feel it really perfected the 2D platforming for this generation, and really comes down to being probably one of my favorite games of this generation, where the platforming was just so spot on, the level designs are so much fun, a lot of secrets to uncover for a platforming game. The graphics, well, it has like this kind of weird graphical glitch, what it seems like on the edge of the screen where things kind of like glitch out a bit, but it's still, graphically it's still pretty impressive. And yeah, just the for me personally, the funnest you'll have on for me, the funnest game is probably Punch Out, but if you've taken a combination of like not only fun, but also just really good gameplay mechanics and all, and a lot of hidden secrets and things like that, then that's where Super Mario Bros. 3 comes in. And I remember when this game was coming out, it seemed like it was like the first main blockbuster that was coming out, because it was everywhere and people wanted to, it was all over the TV. I mean, it made that surprise appearance in that show, The Wizard. And yeah, I mean, it's the closest thing that I can think of what we had back then as like a big blockbuster release. And it was Mario 3. I mean, I remember the commercial where it's like the whole world is chanting Mario, Mario. And yeah, it was a big deal. I mean, Mario, with his first few games, he became a legend already, right? So early on. And because it came out kind of late in the Nintendo's lifetime. I think it was 1989 in Japan, I think in 1990 in the States, something like that. Um, but yeah, it was a pretty big deal, and definitely, my favorite game on the Nintendo. Just a lot of fun. And what I love about it is that it's a bite-sized gameplay where the stages are fairly short. So like I love going in there, playing a few stages, and then save my game, and then come back to it some later time. And it just feels really fun for that. Really like digestible little small chunks of goodness, right? And all as you're playing through these stages. And for me, a lot of times I think I prefer like stages that are shorter, but if they're really well designed and have a lot of fun elements within them, and for that, this game is keen for that. And while I probably like Super Mario, I would say I do like Super Mario World more. It's not by much. This game is definitely really fun, and again, that they got the platforming down so well in these early versions of this game, again, really just speaks a lot about the talent that Nintendo has with their programmers, even going way back then. But yeah, great game, Super Mario Brothers 3. But that's what I got for the for the Nintendo Entertainment System. I'd love to hear what your picks are, as I'm always curious to see what other people would play on this system. Especially if it's outside of like the normal games, which I know the normal games that you normally see on this, like the Zelda, Mario, and all, are typically the ones you usually see on a top 10 list. But I'm always curious though to see what other games people played on this system here that just had so many games at the time, and I know people have a lot of great memories of it. So I'd be fascinated in hearing what you might have really gone into in this during this time here on this system. But I will see you in the next.